Hey everybody, how's it going? Josh here. So with recent news that Spider-Man is back in the MCU officially, we're going to talk about how Spider-Man 3 can connect with the multiverse as a whole, as other movies around its release date from the MCU are also dealing with the multiverse in one way or another. And also it's really interesting because the same day as the announcement Sony and Marvel kind of came back together to the table, we got the announcement that a Madam Web movie is in development at Sony, which on the surface may not be a big deal for a lot of people, but in certain media like Spider-Man the Animated Series, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, Madam Web has always had some sort of alternate universe, multiverse Spider-Man related kind of involvement, where like in the Spider-Man the Animated Series, she was kind of depicted as a lower cosmic kind of being, and then of course, in most of the comics and the media, like movies and TV shows, when she does appear, usually she's just traditional Madam Web, like an old kind of wise character who's blind yet seemingly knows everything. So that's not a perfect description of the character, but I hope it kind of gets the general point across. Now, with Spider-Man Far From Home, we were introduced to the idea of Mysterio being from another universe. I think the Earth they used was the same Earth from Spider UK, which got a lot of people excited about if we're going to see that or not, and people doing conspiracy theories trying to connect that to Black Knight, who will now be in the Eternals. But in all reality, obviously it ended up being a sham, as Mysterio kind of always is having facades here and there, but it did kind of get a lot of people excited about the idea of Spider-Man outside of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse doing multiverse related activities on the big screen. And in 2021, the MCU with the Disney Plus shows and the movies actually has quite a lot of involvement with the multiverse, or I guess other dimensions, other timelines. For example, movies like Wanda Vision, which goes into Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness. Both of those deal with the multiverse in different ways. As far as we know, Wanda Vision will be dealing with the pseudo House of M meets Tom King's Vision run kind of situation where we don't know what makes Wanda crack, but presumably she cracks and with her abilities creates her own pocket universe to some extent. Now from there, we know that movie connects with Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness. Now we don't know the official details for that film, but at one point Nightmare was the main antagonist of that film, so maybe he'll still be around and we will go into his universe among other dimensions throughout the film. And besides that, we have the Loki Disney Plus series, which doesn't really go into different multiverses, but does explore the alternate timeline created by Loki once he got his hands on the Space Stone during the events of Avengers Endgame. And of course, last but not least, we have the Marvel What If series, which has the Watcher exploring various what if situations, which are basically different universes across the multiverse that have just slight differences here and there. So with all that multiverse and alternate universe related material coming to the MCU through Disney Plus or the films, it's not too far-fetched that Spider-Man 3, coming out that same year where the multiverse concept is being pushed heavily, would be dealing with it as well. Especially because we referenced it already before, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the animated movie, did remarkably well, both critically and with the general audience. So fans are pretty well, exposed to the idea of Spider-Men and Spider-Man from different places, kind of interacting, coming for, one kind of mission here or there, whether it's, for something like Into the Spider-Verse, or if it's like a Secret Wars or a Spider-Verse or a Spider-Geddon type of situation from the comics. Now, another thing I find really interesting here is how much Sony has already kind of mentioned they would love to have Tom Hardy's Venom cross over with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the future, which, depending on who you ask about it, you'll get kind of vague, answers here and there. Kevin Feige's kind of like, we'll see about that, where Sony's Amy Pascal's like all gung-ho for it. And oddly enough, this would be a great way to do that while not having Venom be 100% canon to the MCU. Because in this way, if we have multiverse stuff going on here, and they have to introduce Tom Hardy's Venom in some way, shape, or form to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, you can do it, and it doesn't have to actually take place in the MCU. Even though, really me personally, I would love to see more of the Sinister Six develop, since we've already seen Vulture, Shocker, and Mysterio at this point, among other characters. I would love for Spider-Man 3 to stay in New York for the first time in the MCU. The previous Spider-Man films always are going places. They're not really staying in New York a lot of times, besides Homecoming. But even Homecoming it didn't really feel like they were really exploring New York with Spider-Man on the ground level. He kind of stayed in the suburbs a little bit, and while he did swing around, he didn't really feel like in the Amazing Spider-Man and Raimi's films, you felt like Spider-Man was in New York City. And you didn't really get 100% the same vibe in Homecoming, and then of course Far From Home was, well, Far From Home. So it'd be cool to see Spider-Man 3 kind of bring it all back home, especially with his identity now released to the public, and maybe him dealing with the Sinister Six or another villain like Kraven the Hunter that would be hunting someone like Spider-Man. Now instead of that, if we get a multiverse movie, I wouldn't be upset, but definitely it'd be a little disappointing to me personally. I don't know about you guys, comment below your guys' thoughts on it. And of course, if they had to do a multiverse thing, no better character would be used than Madam Web. Now, if they do want to use Madam Web, especially because they're making her movie now, I think a great way of doing it would be doing a live-action Spider-Verse. Now, if they do a live-action Spider-Verse, I would love to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield reappear in their respective roles. I doubt it will happen, but I'd love to see it personally. And even besides that, if they want to have a Pseudo SpiderVerse where it's just Tom Holland Spider-Man, Tom Hardy Venom, somehow Jared Leto's, Morbius, that'd be really cool too, but I'd be really curious who the villains would be. Would it be the Inheritors? Would they connect the Inheritors to Morbius in some way, shape, or form because of the whole pseudo-vampire thing? That's what I'd be really curious about. And also I'd be curious if they kind of do a nice little joke with Into the Spider-Verse, where maybe Tom Holland voices an animated version of his Spider-Man in the sequel that they are in development for making. But leave your comments down below. Do you think Spider-Man 3 will use the multiverse? And do you think Madam Web will be used to connect Sony's Marvel films with the MCU? Let us know your thoughts down below, and we'll see you guys later.